Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and today we are ranking the Commanders' position groups from the initial 53-man roster, because I'm pretty sure with a lot of guys out there getting cut, the waiver wire going crazy, and with us currently still only having 4 corners, and the 4th one isn't even that good, at least yet. I mean, he's a second, 7th round pick, and then the 3 guys in front of him have some injury history to them as well. I'm pretty sure the roster that we have right now is not the final roster. But as of today, say we had to play a game tomorrow, I want to rank our position groups, and then I'll probably do some grades for each position group and re-rank them once we make some moves in free agency. But today we're just focusing on what we have right now, and again, anything can happen, a lot can change, especially specific position groups, and we're going to talk about that when we rank these. Of course, every time we rank the position groups, we're going to break down what's going on with the position group, how good they are they healthy, is it like a high ceiling position group, or is it a high floor, or both? And of course, do I see some of these position group rankings changing throughout the season? But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, make sure y'all pull up every Friday for the broadcast podcast after I get back. Also, make sure you pull up every Sunday for the during the game live streams and the post game live streams, an hour to an hour and a half after the during the game live stream ends, where I'm literally live streaming and analyzing the entire game. And then an hour later, we're doing the call-in show where y'all call in, you call in, and you voice your opinions about what happened with the Commanders, positive and or negative, especially after the dubs that we get this year. But without further ado, let's get it. All right, so just to take health out a little bit, of course it's going to factor in somewhat, but for this positional group ranking, I'm looking at it purely as if we're healthy. And then the reason I can do that is it actually looks like we're getting there. Like a lot of the offensive linemen, tight ends, and certain players that we were worried about potentially not being healthy enough to play week 1, we really don't have to worry about that. It looks like everybody's returning to practice. A lot of guys returned to practice last week. A lot of people returned to practice today. And so we're slowly getting there. And I think pretty much everybody will be available week 1 except for Chase Young and Tyler Larson, who will be on the PUP list. Now, granted, some guys like the tight end position will probably be on some type of pitch count, but for the most part, we're almost fully healthy outside of Chase Young and Tyler Larson to an extent. So I'm gonna go into this positional group ranking assuming that we're healthy, because when you start to factor in like injury potential, like this guy tends to get hurt, so we got to take that into consideration. I'm just gonna assume we're healthy. Who knows what happens after that? And we're gonna start from the back all the way up to the front. We're gonna start with the lowest and then get to the highest. So that's obviously the cornerback position, and I think that's not even up for debate. Granted, I like the starters a lot. Love the starters. Kendall Fuller, William Jackson, Benjamin St-Juste. If they can stay healthy, that's a really good starting group. But then, like I've already mentioned, Christian Holmes is your 4th corner. We are 1 injury away from not only Christian Holmes playing a lot, but actually starting. And he was out there getting beat by 3rd stringers and 4th stringers in the preseason game. Now, granted, he wasn't as bad as DeJuan Neal that was just straight up getting beat 5+ yards in separation. He was mostly there, but the fact still remains he was getting beat in coverage by 3rd and 4th stringers. And so, first of all, with him being the 4th corner right now, with nobody behind him, that means that he's going to play quite a bit anyway, like in just normal regular season games. Corners rotate in and out. Corners don't usually play 100% of the snaps like Cole Holcomb does at middle linebacker. So Christian Holmes is already slated to play quite a bit, even just week 1 against the Jaguars, again as a second 7th round pick rookie. Again, struggling with the 3rd stringers and the 4th stringers in the preseason game. He wasn't terrible, but I'm definitely not optimistic about him being able to contribute immediately. So cornerback moves will be made, but as of today, that's easily and by far our worst position group. Then next is linebacker, and I feel like linebacker and safety are pretty close to each other, and I almost put linebacker above safety because I really liked what I saw from Jamin Davis in his preseason, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up going out there and balling out this season, because the little bit we saw him in the preseason against the run and coverage, he looked like what we hoped he'd be when we drafted him in the 1st round. Now, I'm gonna keep saying he may not live up to that 1st round pick necessarily, great, but I don't think he'll be a bust. I think he's just too athletic, and then his brain is starting to catch up to his body quite a bit. I think he's going to matter for us. But at the same time, Cole Holcomb is also your starting linebacker, and he's improved in coverage. But we saw that when a team wants to attack him in coverage with like a Travis Kelce, and we have good tight ends in our division that we have to play twice a year, it can get pretty ugly for Cole Holcomb. And then after that, David Mayo can stop the run but can't cover anybody. One of the worst coverage linebackers in the NFC East, honestly. And then you have unproven Dejon Harris and Milo Eifler. Now, granted, Milo Eifler looked like the third best linebacker on our roster this past preseason. He played really well, but it's one of those things where I got to see him out there against starters in regular season games for me to truly trust him yet. But he did show a lot of potential. We'll see. And then Dejon Harris, again, also fairly unproven, but he played pretty well in the preseason. There's a reason he made the team over Khaleke Hudson. But like I said, we're gonna have to make some moves to add some corners to this team, so I wouldn't be surprised if Dejon Harris is one of those guys that ends up getting cut to make room for another corner. I mean, I thought we were gonna keep 6 and we're at 4, so they might find some more roster spots from other positions to take away to create a spot for corner. And then safety has to be third from the bottom. Cameron Curl and Bobby McCain, I feel like their chemistry is only getting better. And the reason I give them the slight advantage over the linebackers is that I feel like, even though I prefer Jamin Davis as a linebacker over Bobby McCain, the safety, I prefer Cameron Curl, the safety, over Cole Holcomb, the linebacker. But it's very close. And I like all 4 of those guys quite a bit. I feel like Bobby McCain receives a little bit too much hate. And I also felt like he looked pretty good in the preseason, other than the time where he was matched up one-on-one in the slot with the tight end and he got beat pretty bad. Other than that, when he's been like a free safety, I think he looked pretty good in the preseason. He definitely looked way better that second half of the regular season than he looked in the first. But I also feel like there's a lot of factors into that. First of all, he was a late signing in free agency, so they had to figure out communication, chemistry, and all of that. And then I don't think it's a coincidence that once Landon Collins was not his running mate as strong safety, once we moved Landon Collins down to basically a hybrid linebacker role and let Cameron Curl be the permanent strong safety, that the communication and coverage was just way better. I don't think that was a coincidence at all. And then y'all know I'm huge on Percy Butler, even though based on what I saw in that Ravens preseason game and the way he bit on that route that Danny Johnson also got killed on for the most open touchdown I saw all preseason from any of our games, it looks like he may still not be ready, quite ready, or at least where I thought he'd be at this point. But when he flashes bright. He has some of the brightest flashes out of our entire defense when he makes the right play, when he makes the right decision, but he's just not consistent enough. And then you have Derek Forrest, who's more consistent, but also flashes his time as well. But right now, it looks like he's first in line for the Buffalo nickel position, but Percy Butler will also be rotated in there as well. In regular season games, both of these guys are going to play. And then you also have Jeremy Reeves, who he looked like a different guy out there this preseason. Granted, it was preseason, but I mean, mentally, he just looked further ahead than I've ever seen him since we brought him in here. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this is the first time Jeremy Reeves has made the initial 53-man roster. I don't think it's a coincidence at all. He looked like a new guy out there. And so having him as safety depth also is a really good reason as to why I have the safety slightly above the linebackers, because our safety depth is also far more dependable and has far more potential than the linebacker depth we have. Because David Mayo, out of this entire group of players between all of the linebackers and safeties, 10 guys, David Mayo being on the field probably scares me the most, honestly. And I trust Jeremy Reeves to go out there if we need him to. Then next up, quarterback, and it's mostly just because it's unproven and there's a lot of mystery with it, but also just because I'm really high on the other position groups that we haven't talked about yet, which I have ranked higher on the list. Now, the quarterback group, we'll see with Carson Wentz. I'm very excited about him. I'm one of those fans that's very optimistic about his potential and what he can provide this offense and how explosive we can be. And even with us potentially having some defensive struggles, especially early into the season, with seeing how our third down defense looks and us trying to get off the field and stuff like that, I feel like our offense is going to be explosive enough for us to win shootouts this season. And so I'm really excited about that. And it's not just Carson Wentz, but it's Scott Turner, it's the weapons around him. But I feel like Carson Wentz can be the pilot of an offense that's that explosive. I honestly do. And then on top of all of that, you have a backup in Taylor Heineke, who won 7 games with all of the injuries and COVID-19 situations we had to deal with, and the league's toughest schedule by record last year. We won 7 games with that guy, and he's a backup. So I think that's excellent quarterback depth. He's easily a top 5 backup quarterback. And then Sam Howell, his potential is crazy. I mean, he's out here stiff arming defensive tackles, 300+ pound defensive tackles to the ground to get loose and make a nice scramble. And the reason I'm really excited about him is that not only does he scramble really well, but he scrambles to throw a lot of the time. Now, sometimes he'll look and be like, there's nothing there, let me go and get these yards. And he slides, which is also big because we've seen quarterbacks here fairly recently that refuse to slide and get lit up and hurt themselves. But the most important thing is that he scrambles to throw, and that's a really good trait to build. He has a lot of really good traits to build on. Short quarterbacks usually never read the middle of the field, never usually attack the middle of the field, and normally can't even sit in the pocket. A lot of the smaller quarterbacks usually have the pocket move for them, and they work outside the pocket so they can be able to scan the field easier. But Sam Howell, even as short as he is, at 6'1", I believe, if that, is able to scan the entire field kind of like a Drew Brees, and he will attack the middle of the field. Russell Wilson refuses to attack the middle of the field, even though he's a future Hall of Famer and he arguably has the best deep ball in the NFL. He doesn't attack the middle of the field. He just completely doesn't utilize it, and Sam Howell does. There's a lot of really good traits there that we can build on, and if we just clean up mechanics and things like that, he can end up being a really good starting quarterback. So this quarterback room has a lot of potential. We have the now and some future and the just in case in Taylor Heinicke. I almost put it higher, but I'm just even higher on these other position groups, which takes me to the next group, the running backs. Man, I love these running backs. I'm really high on Brian Robinson. Get well soon. Whenever he comes back, he's going to be a dog. I mean, you need that 3 to 5 yards. He's going to hit that hole and get it. He's not afraid to run over that safety or corner that's waiting for him in the gap. He's going to run right through him. He's going to punish him, and they're going to think about it for the rest of the game. They're going to be like, man, I really don't feel like taking that hit. They're going to hesitate, and over time, throughout a game and throughout a season, he's going to wear people down and start to get even larger amounts of yards in his run plays. It's going to be ridiculous. And then what he can do in the passing game, and now he's improving as a pass blocker. Can't wait to get him back. And then Antonio Gibson, we can't forget about him. Even with the fumbling problem, he was one of 7 running backs last year to rush for 1,000 yards. And then after that, all I got to say is 80-yard screen against the Bills. Go look at that, and that should tell you everything you need to know. And then what he did out there with Taylor Heinicke in the Chiefs preseason game, I mean, that should tell you everything you need to know about Antonio Gibson. He's gonna ball out, especially with the role to where he's not asked and demanded to run the ball more than he needs to. And then J.D. McKissic is the human juke machine. Is just unfair what he can do in the passing game. He's still our best pass blocker, but again, Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson are bigger and stronger, so there's no excuse as to why they shouldn't become better than him eventually. But as of right now, J.D. McKissic is our best pass blocking running back, and I trust him back there to pick up blitz and linebackers and such. And then Jonathan Williams, I like him. I'm still confused as to why we kept him over Jared Patterson. I'm kind of like a coin flip between those two, but I feel like Jared Patterson had the better preseason. But I guess Jonathan Williams has shown them enough in practice and what he did towards the end of last year to make it over Jared Patterson. But either way, if we are able to keep Jared Patterson on the practice squad, I love this running back group. And then next up, I have the receivers, and ultimately at their best, this receiving group could potentially be our very best group on the team, honestly. But we still got to see if Curtis Samuel can stay healthy and if he can translate what he did in Carolina for us. He has the same offensive coordinator other than that last year that he was there, but still, I got to see it. And then Jahan Dotson looks like another Terry McLaurin. It doesn't even look like we got another wide receiver 2 or something. It looks like Terry McLaurin may be 1A and Jahan Dotson 1B. But still kind of got to see it. De'Ami Brown, hated what I saw from him in the preseason. Now, granted, it wasn't all bad. I saw some flashes, but ultimately, he looks like the worst receiver that made the 53-man roster, which takes me to Cam Sims and Dax Milne. Cam Sims does nothing but make plays when we give him the ball. I don't know why we don't target him until November. I want to see him involved in the offense way sooner than that and far more often. And Dax Milne can get open. It looks like against anybody, but we got to see because he didn't play much against starters in the preseason. So when he goes out there with the starters, I'm really interested in seeing what he can do. He's going to play. He's going to have to be active because as of right now, he's our starting punt returner. So we're going to get to see what Dax Milne can do immediately. And honestly, if I'm the Burgundy and Gold, De'Ami Brown, out of any of the receivers, is the one that's inactive, especially since he's the only one that doesn't contribute in special teams outside of the top 3. Cam Sims is great on special teams coverage, and Dax Milne, again, even though I don't love him at punt returns, he's our starting punt returner right now. And obviously, Terry McLaurin is Terry McLaurin, top 12 wide receiver. If anything, he carries this to being a top 4 position group by himself. But again, this position group has the potential to be the best position group on this team when it's all said and done. And then tight end, y'all know I'm huge on the tight ends, even though there's a lot of uncertainties. And I know I just talked about how the wide receivers also have uncertainties. But at the same time, I feel like the combination of Logan Thomas and John Bates is safe enough. Again, I'm assuming when healthy, these two guys are all you need. The fact that we have Cole Turner, Armani Rogers, and Curtis Hodges, and all of the potential that they bring to the table, especially Cole Turner. We saw him in practice. When he's healthy, he was literally Carson Wentz's favorite target, especially in the red zone, but maybe even at certain times throughout the entire field. Even outside of the red zone, when he was driving down the field, he would hit Cole Turner in the middle of the field for nice 20, 30-yard chunk plays. And so I think there's a certain floor to this group that people don't see, and especially when they're healthy, I think this group is at the very least going to be pretty to really good. And I think the ceiling is ridiculous because y'all know me, man. Armani Rogers is my guy. I've been telling y'all, I think he has Darren Waller potential, and if he becomes that along with Cole Turner, who is already Carson Wentz's safety blanket and probably our best red zone threat, then you have John Bates, who's already arguably the best blocking tight end in the NFL, and he also has really good hands and can get yards after catch by running people over. And then you have Logan Thomas, who's a top 12, top 10, maybe even top 8 tight end when healthy, dual threat guy. I just think this tight end group is too talented when healthy to not be one of our better position groups. Granted, I'm going to keep saying it, the wide receiver group has the potential to be the best, but with Dyami Brown bringing the overall, like if I had to give it like a numerical grade, an overall grade for each position group, Dyami Brown's weighing it down quite a bit. I trust all of our tight ends more than I trust Dyami Brown at receiver at this point. And again, with Curtis Samuel, I got to see it health-wise and how he fits in the offense. And then Jahan Dotson is still a rookie, so I kind of got to see it. That goes the same with Cole Turner on Armani Rogers and Curtis Hodges, but at least we got to see Armani Rogers debuted in the preseason a little bit. Jahan Dotson, they didn't want to show too much and give away too much to opposing teams. And Cole Turner, not as hurt as people think. They just shut him down, overly cautious with the injury, and also something similar to Jahan Dotson. They didn't want to show him too much in the preseason to give away their secret weapon in Cole Turner. But again, if I had to go between the tight ends and wide receiver positions going into week 1, or really as of today before we do the final 53-man roster, I may give the slight edge to the tight ends. But again, I love this tight end group. I'm really excited about it, and I'm definitely including a lot of potential in there, but I also believe they have a higher floor than what other people believe. And also Dyami Brown, out of all 5 tight ends and all 6 receivers, you put them in a group and you just have all 11 players together, Dyami Brown is the player I trust the least out of that group combined. And then offensive line, even though it may not be necessarily the most talented, and honestly, that there's an argument to be had there, especially depth-wise, but John Moskow is the best offensive line coach in the NFL, probably the best coach we have on our staff right now. The starting offensive line with Charles Leno, Andrew Norwell, Chase Roulier, Trey Turner, and Samuel Cosmi, if they're healthy, and if they're as good as they ever were, like when they were at their best, like Andrew Norwell and Trey Turner in Carolina, Chase Roulier since he's been here, Samuel Cosmi for the few games that he was really healthy last year, and Charles Leno after the first game against the Chargers last year. If we get those type of seasons out of these guys, especially this season, this has the potential to be a top 5 offensive line once again. And then the depth with Sadiq Charles, who's improved mightily. Cornelius Lucas is an excellent swing tackle. He should honestly be starting for another offensive line, especially at right tackle somewhere. Chris Paul is only getting better every day, and he's almost as athletic as Samuel Cosmi, so the ceiling is limitless. And then Wes Schweitzer, to me, is the best backup interior offensive lineman in the NFL. So I'm not going to dive into the offensive line too much because we already know what this group can do, especially being led by the general himself, John Moskow. Has to at the very least be a top 2 position on this team. And then defensive line, I have number 1. And granted, I am banking on some potential here because we haven't necessarily seen it, but I'm a huge fan of Shaka Toney, and honestly, I think he should move to Sam linebacker, which would technically take him out of the defensive line group so we can have him in coverage because I think he can handle that. I think he's athletic enough and explosive enough and all of that type of stuff. But as a situational pass rusher, you see immense flashes. He does things that nobody else on this team can do, even including Chase Young and Montez Sweat, as far as bend and explosion off the ball and quickness, all of that type of stuff. So I'm really high on Shaka Toney, so that only adds to how great this this defensive line should be. And Jonathan Allen is going to have another Pro Bowl year, probably make second team All-Pro. I wouldn't be surprised. Deron Payne, he's playing for his next contract. He's going to ball out, even if it's not to make this team next year, it's to make another team and get paid the big dollars he wants. Then Montez Sweat, from what I saw in that Chiefs game, it looks like he's finally ready to have his breakout year and finally look like what we thought we got in him when we first drafted him. He's finally starting to show why he should have been a top 10 pick in this draft if it weren't for like the heart concerns that came out like right before the draft. That's the only reason we got him in the 20s. And then, of course, when Chase Young comes back, I think he's going to be dominant, but we will not see him until at least after week 4, and then not sure if he's going to play after only 1 week of practice in week 5. I don't think they're going to rush him. And then the following week is a Thursday night game against the Bears. So that's a short week with very little practice. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Chase Young till week 7 anyway. But even without that, I think Phidarian Mathis is going to be huge for this defensive line. He's going to play out there, be the unselfish one so everybody else can have their moments. He's going to hold it down. Phidarian Mathis is going to be the guy that handles his exact responsibilities, takes on double teams. We're going to run 5 defensive linemen, probably more than people think. And so I'm really excited about that. James Smith-Williams, I'm not as high on him as the coaching staff, but they love him. I loved what I saw from Daniel Wise in the preseason. Casey Tuhill's a decent backup. And then I'm really excited about Efe Obada's potential as well. Efe Obada and Shaka Toney, outside of the starters, and Phidarian Mathis are easily my 2 favorite defensive linemen, especially depth-wise. So I'm really excited about this group, and I think this group will finally pull it together this year and be the group that we thought they could be and be the best defensive line in football. I can definitely see it. Now, it's hard for me to put them number 1 because every time we go into these seasons, they don't end up doing that, but I think this year they finally do it, especially since Shaka Toney and Efe Obada are only getting better. Deron Payne, again, playing for his next big contract. Jonathan Allen's only getting better. If Montez Sweat looks like he's going to have his breakout year, and then we're just going to get a random surprise of, oh yeah, remember we got Chase Young too later on in the season. I think this defensive line is going to be great. But again, this is just as of today, the initial 53-man roster. We'll see what happens. Who knows? Maybe we trade for an all-pro, Pro Bowl level corner, and that just skyrockets the cornerback group. But as of today, what we currently have on roster right now, before we start to hit the waivers and free agency, that's my order. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like if you liked it, if you learned anything. Of course, please agree or disagree with all of my points and my position group rankings. Also, give your position group rankings, especially if you disagree. Even if it's only like 1 or 2 changes, definitely put in the comment section your positional group rankings. I feel like this is a great exercise to kind of get an idea of what our team looks like. And again, I'm probably going to do grades once we do the final 53-man roster, so stay tuned for that. I'm gonna do grades for each position group and rank them with that too, like from A+ all the way to F. Hopefully we don't have any Fs, but we'll see. And of course, man, I appreciate all of the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose names you see scrolling on the screen right now. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.